the Christmas tree pillow stitch along. I'm Sue Spargo, and today we're going to be covering the bird and 3 large baubles, these ones with trellis stitches. So let's get started. Okay, so the first little circle we're going to do is the little bird. So make your freezer paper template, and you're going to cut out the little bird and applique him onto this little peridot circle. And that is the only applique for that little bauble. So the other one is these 3 little baubles with the trellis stitches. So underneath the trellis stitches are little wool circles. So you want to cut those out and stitch them on. And the reason I use wool underneath the trellis, not always, but on this occasion, is that when you do a trellis over a piece of wool, you get a much more dimensional little trellis. And so I like the dimension in it. So you'll cut out the bird and 6 little circles, and those will be your applicators to put down. Okay, so let's talk about the stitches. So on this little circle, we have some fun stitches. We're going to learn, if you haven't done it before, woven picots, a little bit of turkey work, there's French knots and seed stitch, and then a little rosette chain. The things I would do first is probably the little picots, and then a little back stitch, and then the seed stitch and the French knots. And then I always like to do the outside stitch so that it sort of draws up the circle a little bit. So that'll be for the little bird. And then for these 3 baubles that are here, you should draw a couple of little lines for your Palestrina knot. And we're going to do Palestrina knot, 3 little trellises, and then a back stitch around the outside of these. So that'll keep you busy this week. 4 little circles, but you know, if you get 1 done, then you can always add 1 the next week, so that in 16 weeks we've finished our project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of the stitches you might like to have a little bit of help with. So we have mainly 5 spoke picots, but we have a picot that has a point and a picot that is rounded. So the little hat would be more like a little point, and so would the beak, like this. But the wing is a little bit rounded like that. So there's a couple of different techniques that I use to do that. So the very first thing with any picot is you're going to use a very fine needle or pin and put that in your picot, which would be like right here in the center of your picot, like that. Then I always look at the widest point down here, and that is where I bring my needle up. So if we're doing the wing, then we're going to take it around the back of the needle and come down on the right hand side like that. So we've got a 7 spoke, which is for the hat, and then 5 spokes for the little beak and the wing. So I look down here and I'll split this in half like that, and I will come up and go around and come up on this side, and then the very last one you're going to come up the center like that. If you're doing, the beak is going to be done exactly the same. You're going to put your pin in like that down the center. It would be in this direction for the beak, and then you're going to do 5 little spokes on that one as well. For the hat, it's 7 spokes. I want to just draw that for you because you're going to set that up a little bit differently. Come out at the widest point, go around the back and down like this. Then you're going to split this in 3 like this. Come up, go around the back and down here. Come up here, around the back here, and the very last one is going to come up the middle. One other very important thing is that all your dots should be in the same position. If you have one dot that's down like this, eventually when you weave, this spoke is going to stick out over there. So it's important that you, especially if you don't have an edge, like you have an edge against his head here, you know, to place your pin or your needle, but here on the wing we don't have a space either. So if you have a piece of thread and you've used up a lot of it here and you want to join a second thread, you want to join the second thread when you start the very last spoke. So you have to start it from here and then start with that. So for instance, the wing is free, so it's not attached at the tip. So you have to use one complete thread to do this. You can't join, because if you join, say I come up here, it's going to be attached right there. So that's important. Whereas on the beak, we're going to couch it on the tip, and on the hat, we're also going to couch it. So it's not that important. If you run out of thread, you could always start a new thread and continue to weave. When you're doing something that has a point like this, I find that when I do so once your thread is on this side, the very next thing is to weave, and you're going to weave under, over, under, over, under. From this, going in this direction because your thread is on this side. So I always start with an underweave, and I pull this thread very, very tight up to the top so that there's no space between the needle and the thread. When I come back on the second one, I do exactly the same, especially when I want a very, very sharp point. But on this one, which is rounded, you're going to start weaving so that these spokes are rounded here. So you've got to watch it as you're weaving. You can pull these out to shape this in the shape that you're wanting. If you don't pull these threads very tight up at the top, when you take this pin out, you invariably will have a little loop there. So, you know, if it's detached, your picot, I don't want to have a loop on the end. If you're going to attach it, you can hide it a little bit, but to prevent that, you want to use a fine pin or needle, and you want to have your first row very, very tight up here. So you can make picots with as many spokes, just depends on how wide they are, but the wider they get, the more likely you are to have a loop. So just be careful when you do that. And then I like to weave pretty tightly, stack my rows in there, and I weave back and forth, and you're going to use a tapestry needle or the back of your needle. Don't use the point of your needle. And as you weave, I keep my needle in there and I push up and then pull it out, weave back, push up, just like you would be on a weaving loom. And then you'll have really nice, very fun little picots. So you've got 3 to practice with, so that's quite a lot. So hopefully those tips will help you a little bit as you do them, and especially saying that a lot of our pieces on this are pretty small, so we want to keep everything tight. So that's the hat, the beak, and the wing. So the other stitch is turkey work, and turkey work is, it's loops and anchor stitches, and it's very important to have the loop plus an anchor stitch so that your loops don't fall out. And you want to do these little loops quite close together and as loops, but you also want to do your rows quite close so that it fills in. So what you're going to do is bring up your needle where you're going to start, and you're going to make a little loop like this. And we've got really tiny pieces here, so these loops don't have to be very long. We can trim them, so, you know, nothing more than 1/4 inch, because you'll probably trim them. And you're going to bring your needle out in the center of that loop. And then you're going to do an anchor stitch here, and then you're going to do another loop. And then you're going to do an anchor stitch, and then another loop, and an anchor stitch, another loop. And so you have a row of loops that butt up to each other and anchor stitches that butt up to each other, but they are offset from your loops. When you finished your row, I always fudge this anchor stitch right here. So it's a 1/2 stitch and not a long stitch there, because otherwise you're going to have these stitches sticking out on the edge. So you're going to do a half an anchor stitch. Then you're going to work backwards, and now you're going to repeat that, but you're going to have your loops offset from the original loops as well as your anchor stitches, and you're going to do a second row. And so you do rows and rows of this. So we don't have many rows, maybe 2-3 rows for the little part on the little hat. So I'm going to demo that because it looks easy when you draw something, but I'm going to do it on here with the thread that you'll be doing it with. So you're going to come up, and if it helps, you can draw yourself a little chalk line, but you're going to do a little loop like this. Okay, and you're going to come out in the center of your loop like that. Then you're going to do an anchor stitch. So you're going to go half a stitch to the right, but come back out right where the end of the last loop was. And your anchor stitch is always tight. Then you're going to do another loop. So another half a stitch, and then come up on the edge of your anchor stitch, and you'll get another loop. And then you're going to do an anchor stitch like this. So you can see all the anchor stitches touch each other, and the same with the loops touch each other, and the anchor stitches do the same, but the anchor stitches are offset from the loops. So, you know, you'll probably do them smaller than I'm doing. I'm just doing this for demo so you can see it, because his hat is really tiny. So let's fudge this now. So here I'm doing a loop, but I do not want to be doing an anchor stitch that's going to be showing here after the loop. So I'm going to do a half a loop, a half an anchor stitch, and come out in the center of that last loop I just made. I find it easier to work vertically and work towards myself on the second row. So here I'm going to have a loop. It's going to start in the center of the second loop and come up where the two come together. And there's my loop right there. And there's the anchor stitch. Now I'm going to do another loop like this. Then an anchor stitch. You also probably noticed that I always have my loops to one side like that, and my anchor stitch thread to the right, so that they don't get twisted at the bottom. So here I'm just going to do a half a little one just so that I can fill in the side here, and I'm going to come up. Actually, I'll just come up so that I can come up right on the edge here. And I'll do one more row and then we'll cut it. So here I'm going to do little, and you can see the smaller the width of your loops and anchor stitches, and also I'll just do them a little closer here because that's how you'll want to do them. Then the more it's going to fill in, especially when you're using a finer thread like this. So we'll do a third row. And if you need to start a new thread or finish the old one, all you're going to do is, once you've done an anchor stitch like this, you can just cut your thread the same length as your loop like this. Okay, so now once you've done that, you're going to cut all your loops like this. And looking at this, I can see that this is going to be too long, so I'm just going to give it a little haircut before I and then you want to use a bunker brush. So this is a little brush that has very sharp little needles on it, and it is designed to open up thread or into sort of a chenille. And when I'm doing wool, I do it around my finger like this so that I'm just really catching the threads and not all the wool, because you don't want to be getting the needles to fuzz up the wool. And you know, I'll see people, you know, this brush is designed for turkey work, and if you do it, it's nice to have one, because I've seen people say, oh, I just use my cat brush. Well, you know, that's a huge brush, and you're more than likely going to catch all the wool, and it's going to make it very, very fuzzy. So this way, you're just really working with the threads that you want to. Can you see? So you see how it opens up really nicely. It's really nice to do turkey work with wool threads. So like the type of threads that we use are silk and ivory or plaid, things that have a good wool content, because what I find is with wool, it stays nice and fluffy and pom-pom and open up really well. Cotton is fine for what we're doing, but if you did a big patch of cotton, what I find over time, it flattens and it gets a little matted. So if I was doing a big piece, I would use silk and ivory or something that has much more bounce to it. So you can see, there you go. So this is a stitch we're going to use in a couple of blocks. And of course, it works really well for Christmas hats and things like that. So that is turkey work. So we're doing turkey work on the top of his little hat, and also a little bit below. So have fun with that. And the other stitches, like the trellis stitch, is a back stitch, and then you're going to do a knotted stitch on these. There's many videos I've done on that, and the palestrina and even woven picot, all those are on our stitch shorts on YouTube. So make sure that you know, if you need a little refresher, you can go back there and find some ideas on how to approach the stitches. Well, have fun this week working on your bird and with 3 baubles, and I hope you have fun with those little trellis stitches and a little bit of turkey work and woven picots. Thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe.